has also served as the Director, Institute of Women's Studies, University of Lucknow. She is the recipient of many academic awards, including the Meenakshi Mukherjee Award 2016, a C.D. Narsimhaya Award, and the Isaac Sikera Memorial Award. She has also presented papers at numerous academic conferences, and her essays have been included in a variety of scholarly journals and books. She has conducted numerous conferences, seminars, workshops on gender budgeting and gender sensitization. She has worked on various projects funded by the Ministry of Women and Child Development, UNICEF, UGC, and other agencies. She has lectured extensively on subjects at the intersection of cinema, culture, and gender studies. Professor Haider's current research interests include post-colonial studies, translation, popular culture, and gender studies. Over to you, Nishat ma'am. Please take it ahead and introduce our chair, Shanmugapriya.
Thank you very much, Anab. Good evening, or what should I say? I mean, a warm welcome to our speaker, Shanmugapriya, on behalf of our head of the department, Professor Nishat Zaidi and Jamia Millia Islamia. I extend a very warm welcome to everyone present over here virtually across time zones in different locations. And the paper presenter for this plenary session is Shanmugapriya T. Shanmugapriya T is a postdoctoral research associate at Digital Humanities Hub, Department of History, United Kingdom. Her research focuses interdisciplinary fields, including literature and environmental history, by applying digital humanities methods and tools. So without much ado, I invite Shanmugapriya T to deliver her talk. Over to you, Shanmugapriya.
I'm just sharing her recording. Give me a second, please.
Thank you so much, Professor Nishat. I think my internet is really giving me some troubles. So I just sent my recorded video.
Is it on? Can you all see it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to play it then. Please let me know.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to present quantitative stepwise analysis of the impact of technology in Indian English novels published between 1947 to 2017. This research actually had begun with close reading of few English novels, Arkai Narayan's The Raindrops Feeds, Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children, Amita Ghosh, The Calcutta Chromosome. These novels are actually published in different decades, but the technological devices in the novels act as a literary actor and they unify the narration. For example, the story reading machine, The Raindrops Feeds, actually creates a tension in the plot. And radio in Midnight's Children has various rules that actually drives the story. Ava, the supercomputer in the Calcutta Chromosome, actually have created a network of narrative that drives and unifies the narration. So the qualitative study of these novels provides new insights about the intervention of technological devices, and also these suggest there must be a pattern and in the discourse of technological devices in the novels published across post-independence period. But drawing a conclusion based on the qualitative study of few novels for the period of over the period of 70 years is really problematic. And also it'd be really challenging to study the novels closely in the period of 70 years. So the another option available to us is the algorithmic computing. So I did the quantitative study of selected Indian English novels to look at the significant change in the employment of technological devices over the periods of 70 years, and also to identify the substantial discourse of each technological objects in the novels, and also to look at the overall patterns of modern objects in the novels. For this, I also introduced a new method, quantitative stepwise analysis. This method actually is inspired by the existing methods of Ranka Moretti, Matthew Jokos, Catherine Board, and Wyvern Aid. This method can be applied to study literary works in a systematic way, and it also can be used to study either paragraphs or even sentences or words, even based features, place names and their influences, and objects oriented. This method has 4 stages. Source text. In source text, I collected the digitized and digital files, and in the second model, I actually extracted the desired data and also did the pre-processing, like cleaning the data. In the third model, I applied various software to study the collected text. In the last stage, I created visualization for the output. I collected 47 novels based on 3 criteria: novels from each decade, and both canonical and non-canonical authors' novels from all sorts of settings. I also I limited myself to focus only on 4 technological devices like a telephone, radio, television, and computer, and I also included the substitutes and acronym during extraction. I applied R software, particularly keywords in the context tool to isolate the desired data. Then I also used topic modeling tool to analyze the primary data. In the last stage, I created visualization by using the online tool. But this quantitative method also has its own limitations. First one is the lack of digitization. I couldn't get the digitized files mainly before the 1980s novels, and we do not have digital consortium like Hathi or even the Gutenberg, where I can find the find or even free or both payment related works. But the another gap is the gap in the novel production. Um, I could collect more novels published after 1980s, but before 1980s, I could find only very less novels. And the another issue is copyright. Since Indian English novels is relatively new compared to, like, for example, British literature. So I had to buy novels from online platforms like Amazon and Google Books. Then I did the experimentation. So the highest appearance of technological devices is telephone. So I will explain more about this. So I created a scatter plot based on the appearance of technological devices across the 7 periods from 1947 to 2017. So one can observe the substantial change in the presence of technological devices as the high density of all the devices falls after 1980s in the course of periods from 1947 to 2017. We can actually classify these changes into 2 categories. One is low density periods from 1947 to 1980 and high density periods from 1980 to 2017. And there are 2 main causes for these significant changes. First one is, as I mentioned, the increase in the production of novels after 1980s, and the second, though the thresholds of modern technological objects in India began in different eras. For example, telephone in 1882 and radio in 1927. They were introduced in the pre-independent periods, and television in 1959 and computer in 1955 were introduced in the post-independent periods. The paradigm shift actually occurred after 1980s with many new initiatives such as Department of Telecommunications and Liberalization Act in 1991 and the National Communication Policy in 1994 and 1999. So actually then the high density of telephone begins after 1980s and it reaches the highest number of appearance after 2000. That is because due to modernized version of telephone, that is mobile technology, and it has many features, so then it started appearing in a number of times. So like telephone, radio also was equally created by the society. However, the high density of radio falls between 1980 and 1999, after which year the density becomes low with intervention and ascendancy of mobile, television and computer technologies. Once television was removed from the list of luxury products, actually though television was introduced in the early period, but it was considered as a luxury product. Then once it was removed from the luxury products, the consumption was increased. The high density of the television actually begins after 1990s and after the reinforcement of infotainment by the National Channel Doordarshan and many other private channels. The low density of television is from 1980 to 1990, as it was not familiar as radio and phone in the 1980s in Indian families. The one appearance in 1959 is from R.K. Narayan's The Guide, in which Narayan mentions about the American television group. And if you look at the Western technological introduction, after World War II, television broadcasting was already famous and became a significant cultural device in Western countries, especially in America and Britain. Though the presence of computers starts from 1980s, the high density begins from 1998. Unlike other technologies, computer does not frequently appear. But we can find its consistency in the plot from 1980 to 1998 as the writers like Anita Desai, Amita Ghosh and Salman Rushdie used computer as a symbol of modern object in their novels. So the high density of computer falls off from 1998 to 2017 as it has multiple features and it becomes ubiquitous in the social structure due to the development of internet and digital technologies that reflected in the narrative. So this discussion gives us a panorama of the presence of technological artifacts in Indian English novels. It helps us to understand the milieu of modern gadgets in the society past 7 decades. In order to understand their impacts in the narration of selected novels, I will discuss the discourse of technological artifacts which are obtained from topic modeling results. Some of the terms like she, her, day, house, night, left, father of women peasants indicate the domestic sphere. And male characters' names and their associated terms like Agastya, Madanapal, Arvind, Amit, and their associated terms like place, international, job, meet, happy, soft, in many more, they actually denote the social sphere. So to understand this pattern more deeply, I actually went back to study the portrayal of women characters in Indian English novels. So Shanta Krishnasamy in her book, The Women in Indian Fiction, 1950-1980, says that liberation and equality are hard to reconcile for women characters. Meenakshi Mukherjee, I quote, one might argue that the classical ideals no longer obtain in the Indian context. But in actual literary practice, numerous characters are found to be adhered to classic prototypes, especially the women of fiction who persistently reenact the suffering, sacrificing role of Sita or Savitri. Another critic, Steve Dennis, in this chapter, Men's Sexuality and Women's Subordination in Indian Ethnicisms, in which he says that westernization, modernization are always associated with the men in India rather than women. So such kind of milieu might have reflected in the narrative. And also if you look at the literary history, novels of R.K. Narayan, Mulk Raj Anand, Raja Rao, Kamala Markandeya in the pre-independent period, they portrayed the predicament of human characters. And in the post-independent period, both women and men writers, they were portraying the changing face of women lives in India. But both pre and post-independence period writers, the women characters always they fight for their rights, identities, and equalities, which always confined within the domesticity. So these kinds of milieu might have reflected in the topic modeling result. Discourse of television artifact. Female characters' names and their topics terms aligned with the characters' names such as sense, addict, thought, and male characters' names and associated terms like election, coming, rich, community, sees actually indicates different kind of connotation as you can see. And even some of the one discourse I found like of course television is a domestic technology. There are many terms appeared domestic related, but if you look at these terms, you can also find mother, women, not men or not father. So to understand this complex pattern, I looked at the television history in India. And then if you look at the trajectory of television in India, as Jayasri Kalanithil argues, many programs of television channels, particularly Doordarshan, that actually targeted women audience. For example, cookery shows, makeup, beauty tips, and other home management. They actually mainly targeted for women audience in order to adopt the westernization and modernization. So such kind of narrative mirrored in the topic modeling results. But this comes even worse when it comes to discourse of computer artifact, because algorithm picked up only one female character name and the remainings are male characters names, and even the associated terms are like cipher cafe, talking, kuji, entire, make, thought, email, traveled, and many more. They actually denote the social sphere. And if you look at the novels, you can also see writers used computer and related technologies as a source of occupation for male characters and to explore the world, and also used to represent their skill. Overall pattern of modern devices in the narration of the novels, which is pattern of gender disparity. So are these cultural apparatuses merely employed to reinforce the old prejudices, or these social and network institutions deployed to bring new messages, or are they creating new ideologies for gender? So we'll try to find answer for these questions. So the close observation of the results and discussion bring our attention to look at the considerable gap in the narration of the relation between male and female characters with the technological devices. First of all, the number of male characters' names appeared frequently than the names of female characters. The narration gap of genders unambiguously exemplifies the gender disparity in the first place. Many scholars like Ritu Menon, Niveta Menon, Rajeswari Sundarajan, Shanta Krishnaswamy have been discussing the struggles of women for their identities, rights, recognitions, and equalities in the society and literary novels. However, the gender inequality in the science and technological realm, in terms of discourses about the occupation, access, and harness, are less converse topics in India. Especially, it has been overlooked in the Indian literary scholarship. Gender disparity is a common phenomenon in India in terms of access to education, economic condition, science and technological fields. Not surprisingly, the technological gender gap in the narration of the novels paints such kind of disparity for women characters, recording the possession and accessibility of modern gadgets. The country like India, women relegated as a second citizen and subordinate to men. The conventional literal interpretation of women about their role and status in the society has been questioned since 1960s. Many writers like Smith, Chakutai, Amita Pritam, Magastwa Devi, Krishna Sobiti, Kamala Das, and Kamala Makane have couched and explored the concepts of identities, bodies, boundaries, and sexualities. Um, in such a milieu of women characters in the history of Indian English novels, the topic terms of women facets for telephone and computer technologies reinforce the traditional ideologies that women are barred from harnessing technologies which presumed as a predominantly belong to the male community. The novelists tend to pursue the conventional ideals that man can embrace the education, technology, and science, for which fields it is overtly compromised that women are not primarily entitled due to many socio-cultural factors. For instance, in their book Poverty, Female Headed Households and Sustainable Economic Development by Nerina Vechko and Karthik Chandra Rai, remark, I quote, girls in India are primarily groomed for marriage. Parents prefer to invest in a boy's education. So, in addition to this, the Indian patriarchal system would not allow women to possess any assets of her own. which resulted in a few novels that women characters are not allowed to use telephone, or they have to use it with their permissions from their household husbands or other male in their home. Women are legitimated to use and possess telephone once it made into the list of necessary entity of both domestic and social settings. Concurrently, most of the novelists construct their women characters and protagonists as a reflective of the specific social imperatives, such as homemakers, housewives, mother, daughter, and mother-in-law, whose boundaries are constrained within the domesticity. Even the feminist writers in India make their women characters fight for their identities and rights within the realm of domesticity. Hence, Indian women, both in society and novels, come back for their recognition and identities. Given the inequalities of women in the home and society, the narrative about the underrepresentation of women in occupational places. And in this record, the themes about working women in the technological fields such as IT and computer are yet to explore in Indian literary landscape. Consequently, the topic model algorithm picked up only one woman character's name in the computer discourse. Indeed, what it shows that novelists inclined to portray the male protagonist as a computer scientist or IT geek, which is apparently a stereotypical. Um, so this implies that the male community is considered as a legate of technological institutions and brings pivotal note that female characters always do not have a key role in pertinent to any computing technological aspects in the literary novels. Besides this conventional principle, the topic modeling results underpin the pattern that cultural apparatus always also improvise new ideologies for gender. In her essay Real and Imagined Women, Politics and of Representation by Rajeswari Sundarajan points out emergence of new Indian women through the reconciliation of tradition and modernity, which always represented in the media, television and advertisements, print and literature. She actually particularly notes about how advertisements and television project the imagined version of pan-Indian identity of women who are represented as, I quote, perennially and transcendently wife, mother, and homemaker, who prevents modernization from collapsing into westernization, thus making possible the conception of new and Indian. In a similar vein, the narrative account of television in the novels create a such identity of new Indian women. The device formulates a new norm for women to attain in their daily lives by teaching them to equip themselves according to the trend of modernism or spending quality time in educating themselves. For instance, modern women watches serials which portray modern middle class women's issues and how to tackle it, and makeup tips, cookery shows, songs, and films, etc. In contrast, men characters learn and update his knowledge about business, sports, history, and education. So Sundarajan says, I quote, it is only the female subject who can be shown as successfully achieving the balance between tradition and modernity through strategies of representation. As she says, the portrayal of female characters and their association with technological devices has been evolved from inaccessible to useful entity with a particular focus to update their knowledge, which balances between modern and tradition. However, even few working women in science and technological fields hardly get any recognition. So overall, the unrecognized, unsung, unnarrated heroines in the real and real of technological realms could be the primary reason that the topic modeling did not select much women characters named for the computer artifact. These technologies are exercised to reinforce the traditional ideologies and create new conventional ideologies for women and men. Such representation of disparity are naturalized and integrated into the narrations, and they are formed as a normative mode of gendered categories. Women are invariably marginalized or hidden throughout the history of technology, which is explicitly and implicitly resonated in the narration of the novels. And our topic modeling results correspond to such stereotypical gender inequality. So, thanks to digital humanities methods, which help to locate this new insight in the narration of the novels, which would have been gone unnoticed otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this wonderful talk paper presentation on the imprint of technological artifacts, particularly telephone, radio, television, and computer by using DH method and tools. Now, I would request the rapporteurs to read out the question from the chat box. And I see a couple of questions, or rather, one question posed by Professor Nishat Zaidi and T. Shanmugapriya. She has, typed in the answer also. So could the rapporteurs chip in, please? Anab?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Is Shanmugapriya online? Is she available to talk?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
yes.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Thank you so much
okay.
for that wonderful presentation that you did. I have a quick question. So while you were working on these set of novels, and you said that you're looking at four major sort of keywords. Did you treat them as keywords? Did you look for specifically computational or sort of digital keywords to look for in these novels, or what other scope do you think that there is, what other parameters or words can be used to look at, say you are working on gender disparity, for example. So could we also maybe extend this argument and look at social hierarchies, or say economic hierarchies, or is there any, how can we also use this quantitative analysis that you have done in other works? So please, if you could talk a little bit about that.
And
Okay, great.
also,
Thank you.
if we could just extend Anab's question, and stretch it a little more, and ask a question as to how to pick up the keywords. Over here also the politics of inclusion and exclusion also comes in, as to who is picking up the keyword, and the mode of selection of the keywords, and what is being left out. So that is another study, another discursive layer that adds to the already existing, problems and issues. And and Professor Nishat Zedi's question and the answer to that we would be reading out
I'll,
after.
I'll, I'll read that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please feel free to respond, Shanmugapriya.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That is actually interesting and really good question. Actually, even I wondered sometimes, what makes that keywords, that is the perfect definition. So for my research, that actually, as I mentioned in the chat box, I did that background study. So that background study helped me to select the keywords. And then the difficulty is just keywords, that's not sufficient. You can extract the keywords whatever you want in the text, but what kind of analysis you can make out of it? That's the important thing. So when I started this research, I actually decided these kind of keywords I want to extract, but how can I do with it? What can I do with that? So then I went through some of the codings, and then I find it just keywords definitely not adequate for my analysis. So I found a code that can extract the words concordances, like let's say that collocations. So then collocation is also another issue. Just collocations bread and butter. So whenever technology, like radio, if you take radio, voice can be the collocation. So it's only appears radio and voice. So again, that is not sufficient. So then I need the code kind of deep learning code. So deep learning code, how I did then, it took actually 1.5 years for me. And then I did that. I actually wrote the programming to extract the sentences that comes whenever these technological words and their substitutes and their acronyms, wherever they apply. So the code should extract the sentences, not just the keywords. So that way I can say. So basically, the background knowledge about this area of your study, and then the coding part. That will help you. I can share another experience. Actually, I did one more paper with my colleague, and it's her research area. That's about Northeast Indian English literature. So her research, my friend is my friend, and her name is Vatitula. And she's actually did amazing research, like about the oral aesthetics, how oral aesthetics neglected in the scholarly representation. So we wanted to do same kind of analysis. But this, for my research, if we, because technological devices you can name it, but oral aesthetics you cannot just simply name it. So she actually helped, because her knowledge helped me to find the keywords. So that's where like we came up with sorting out the keywords that she wanted to collect the results. Sorry, collect the data. So she gave me a list of keywords because she already did the close reading of novels for her research. So that helped her, and she also did really good analysis about the scholarly production. So that's where we did that paper also, that also now published, and the result was really amazing. So I hope this might be answered.
No, absolutely. I think it's brilliant. I just want to take a minute to read out what Professor Nishat Zaidi had written. How effective is quantitative analysis in interpreting a literary text, which more than the sum of visible lexical nodes? And you have responded that you would you like to read out your response from
Yeah,
this
I can do
chapter?
it.
Yeah, please go
So
ahead.
actually, I wanted to say for the interpretation, that actually I also struggled. It's not like just in a night I got the answer, but I studied Matthew Joger's quantitative analysis book. That actually helped me a lot. I actually followed his pattern, like the blended approach he only suggested, because if you go through Franco Moretti's and other quantitative analysis, there are many issues, because that sometimes abstract results. You have the, you have the visualization, you have to interpret, without knowledge of the background knowledge of the period or literature, that won't help you. So you need blended approach. So
Okay.
that's where I started reading first, closely studying few novels from different decades. So
Okay.
that helped me to find the thread. So that's where I started. So I would say blended approach of both qualitative and quantitative studies, and a deep understanding about the period of literature and other like things whatever happen in those period will help you to enhance the
Actually,
interpreting of the quantitative results.
I
Such
think your
approach
work
will
is
help you to
your
locate
work is
meaningful
the
notes.
witness to the kind of in-depth study that you have done, because the graphs that you had shown, the code that you have developed, and extracting the sentences, which put together gender and computational technology. I think it's brilliant and it's so inspiring. I would like to sort of close this session here. Nishat, ma'am, do you have anything to say?
No, this brings us to the close of this session, plenary session. Thank you very much for all the questions and responses, and thank you to the paper presenter. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
let's
Thank you
wrap
so much
up.
for the opportunity.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll be meeting again at 6:30 for the valedictory address by Dr. Dhanashri Thorat, and we also have Dr. Sean as the chair. Um so thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and over to Zehra.
That's it. We'll just meet at 6:30 then. Thank you
Okay.
so much, Arnav, and thank you, Nishat ma'am, for chairing the session so well. And thank you, Shanmuga. Even yeah, okay, Shanmuga is here. Thank you, Shanmuga, for the awesome talk. We'll see each other soon then. Okay, I'm
Bye bye.
ending the
Yeah.
meeting.